Why would a totalitarian government want to infantilize you? Narcissistic and toxic parents infantilize their children, gives them control over their children for their whole lives. A narcissistic, toxic, and totalitarian government would be no different. In this video, I'm going to talk about what that would look like and why they would want to do it. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. So throughout history, totalitarian governments have infantilized their people. When the people are infantilized, when the population is infantilized, it makes them easier to control. In the Soviet Union, they did a lot of this infantilization. Stalin was portrayed as the father of nations. North Korea still do it today with the parent leader. A totalitarian government would want the people dependent on the government for jobs, for survival. If there was a country with a lot of freedom that wanted to switch to a more totalitarian model, they might do this by bringing lots and lots of people into the country. This would drive down wages. It would increase rents and house prices. It would increase the cost of living. It would be a great way to increase the people's dependency on the government. Low-skilled, low-paid jobs, people working those jobs wouldn't be able to make a decent living. They certainly wouldn't be able to make enough to support a family. So they'd need to go to the government for assistance. They'd need to go to the government to top up their wages. Government might call this something like universal credit. This strategy would enable a government to shift the blame from themselves and their destructive policies on to the working poor, the people who were working but weren't making enough to survive on themselves. They would feel shame about needing to go to the government to get help, to get assistance. Making the cost of living so high that both parents need to work means that children need to be taken care of by the state at an earlier age. And this gives the state more opportunity to indoctrinate those children. A high cost of living would put more strain on family units, causing more families to break up, causing more dysfunction within the families. This would give the government another excuse to interfere in people's family lives. If there were a long-term plan to bring in a global dictatorship, it would take a lot of planning. It would probably involve targeting housing, increasing the cost of house prices. People who got on the property ladder early might think this is a good thing because their house price keeps rising in value. They might get into debt using the equity from that house to buy more and more junk. If they had a wounded inner child, they would be the ultimate consumers. They'd be looking outside of themselves to feel okay, buying all kinds of rubbish. They'd be very easy to sell to. As time went on, housing would become less and less affordable. People who got in at the pyramid at the bottom would see their investments increasing. they'd see themselves turning, a small house purchase into millions. But the people who get in later, higher and higher up the pyramid, they're having to pay more and more until it becomes unaffordable for them, and their only option is to rent. So seeing this, a decent government would step in to try and reduce house prices, to try and reduce the stress on the housing stock. A government that had a long-term plan to bring in some kind of totalitarian world order wouldn't. A government with a long-term plan would actually actively work to increase house prices, and they might bring in schemes like help to buy, which people getting in on that pyramid later might think was actually useful for them, but in reality it'd just be increasing prices further, with people busy trying to stay afloat, trying to keep a roof over their heads. They would be preoccupied. They wouldn't be able to have a think and a look at these schemes and start to question what the real purpose was. They'd be constantly in survival mode. Increasing house prices would give a government another element of control. People would be focused on trying to keep that roof over their head, trying to pay that unaffordable mortgage. They would be scared of losing their place on the property ladder because house prices would have risen so much that it would be impossible for them to buy another home if they should lose their job and become unable to pay that mortgage. Such people would be afraid to go against the rules. They'd be afraid to go against the crowd. People living in this fear of losing their home would become very compliant. People would develop very high levels of cognitive dissonance, just like a child in a dysfunctional family doesn't want to see their parents as bad because there's nothing they can do about it. They internalize dysfunction, see themselves as bad. People growing up in an environment with such a narcissistic, toxic government would do the same thing. They wouldn't want to see the government as bad because there's nothing they can do about it. The government has guns and tanks and things. People are going to develop cognitive dissonance. They won't want to speak out or complain about anything that's going on, but for fear of being cancelled, losing their job. They won't disobey even when things get really weird for fear of losing everything. They wouldn't want to admit that and look like cowards. So they would turn on anyone who does go against the crowd, who does disobey the rules. They would attack them. Under a totalitarian government, all commerce would be controlled by the state. Goods would be rationed, media would be censored, and a government could ration things without actually calling it rationing. Just by increasing the prices of things, people become less able to buy those things, so their access to those things is reduced. A totalitarian government, or a government that was beginning to become totalitarian, might make food and energy unaffordable through taxation. They might blame it on other factors when it's really their policies that have created those things. When people talking about what such a totalitarian government was doing, they'd have to use code words. They'd have to say, what if when talking about what was actually happening, like pretending not to notice the elephant in the room. A totalitarian government would control people's access to food. Chairman Mao ordered the killing of sparrows. They were named as one of the 4 pests. And because there were no sparrows, the locusts increased in number and decimated the crops. The plagues of locusts led to famine. If a totalitarian regime wanted to take over the world, it might start by targeting farmers and farming. It might start making farming an unprofitable business to being, which would reduce the cost of farming land, which would make farming land less profitable and farms less valuable. Such a government or agents of such a government could then buy up that land for very low cost, for a fraction of what it was actually worth. People growing their own food would be demonized. People would be made to register their livestock through threat of global disaster or disease, which could even lead to a cull of people's personal livestock. In communist Albania, Enver Hoxha kept the Albanian people in a state of fear. He used the fear of foreign invasion to keep the people of Albania under control. And if you ever visit Albania, you'll see lots of concrete bunkers all over the countryside there to this day. If there were a plan to create a one world government, fear could be used to make people toe the line, make people go along with the agenda. Could be a fear of global disaster, could be a fear of disease or war. Fear of disease and global disaster would be used to destroy wealthier countries' economies, making the residents of those wealthier countries more reliant on the totalitarian regime. There would be increasing inflation, unemployment, and reduced food security. A full-blown war would really help a totalitarian regime to bring in their agenda. It would create massive destruction. It would enable the people heading the governments to redirect attention from them onto an enemy state. It would also cause the death of many, many people, particularly younger men, who would be the biggest threat to a coming totalitarian regime. So such a government would want to cull the young men who might start to experience unrest in the country when these policies were being introduced. A full-blown war would destroy supply chains, leading to all kinds of shortages and increasing energy prices. A one world government would infiltrate the cabinets. People would think they had a choice in who ran their country. In reality, they'd be voting for 2 people selected by the totalitarian regime that was really taking things over. It wouldn't really matter who people voted for. The long-term plan would still be imposed, and each successive government would blame the last for the collapsing and the collapse of society and the worsening living conditions. Countries would be led by yes men and women deliberately selected for their clownish appearances. So each successive leader could say, it wasn't us, it was the last buffoons. We have to destroy things even more. Ever worsening circumstances would be blamed on incompetence. And when such a government tried to impose ridiculous measures that were obviously going to have long-term negative effects on the economy, people would say, oh no, it's just because they're incompetent and stupid. They're not bright enough to destroy everything on purpose. If people voted in a way that wasn't expected, or a renegade somehow managed to get into power, banking systems would be used to destroy a country's economy. I'm so glad we don't live in such a world. If we did, the people that made up society would have to be highly infantilized. They'd have to be highly narcissistic, only thinking about themselves, not worrying about future generations, only thinking about what they can gain as long as their assets kept rising in value. Who cares if future generations aren't going to be able to buy anything? People would believe that others are responsible for how they feel, that others are responsible for making them feel safe. And a government would prey on people's codependency issues to try and push this idea to use how other people feel to further their agenda, to use emotional blackmail tactics to further their agenda, to accuse people of trying to kill their granny if they don't follow certain rules. A government might even launch emotional blackmail campaigns, such as look into their eyes. A society would be infantilized. They would have internalized all of that abuse from the government. They would have developed a belief that they're faulty in some way. They would have developed a state of learned helplessness. Even when opportunities for change become available, they wouldn't be able to see them. They would just go along with the crowd and do what they're told, thinking that that would keep them safe. The problem with this kind of strategy is that when you appease an abuser, it doesn't stop them. They just push the boundaries and see what more and more ridiculousness they can get away with. They are like children pushing the boundaries, seeing how far they can push. These are just my thoughts on what an incoming totalitarian government might look like. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Healing your inner child. The only way that a people living in such a state could start to overcome this would be to heal their inner child, to start to overcome codependency, to start to be able to set firm boundaries, to be able to say no, to be able to think critically, to be able to look at information, to analyze situations, to be able to recognize emotional abuse and blackmail when they see it. If you like this video, found it useful or entertaining, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. Check the description below for the Inner Child Workbook.